There is a figure inside your mind, a constant companion who believes it is the architect of your success, the warden of your identity, and the protector of your future. But Alan Watts said this figure, this ego, is really a magnificent saboteur. You know the pattern, we all do. You stand on the edge of a breakthrough. The new relationship is finally serious and healthy. The creative project is finally complete and ready to launch. You are finally, after years of effort, about to secure the life you always said you wanted. And then, you throw a wrench into the works. You pick a fight over nothing. You procrastinate the launch until the moment passes. You find a perfect, rational, and totally devastating reason to doubt the entire thing, and you stop. It feels accidental. It feels like bad luck, or perhaps a deep flaw in your character. You call it self-sabotage, and you try to fix it, to stop doing it. But the harder you try to stop, the more certainly it returns, often bigger, often more painful. This is the great paradox Alan Watts sought to illuminate, the central drama of modern anxiety. Self-sabotage is not a mistake. It is not an accident. It is the ego succeeding perfectly at its true hidden job. And the moment you truly see this mechanism, the moment you realize why the ego cannot and will not allow you to have the success, the peace, or the freedom you crave, is the moment the entire game can finally come to a stop. Watts's insight is that you are not broken. Your anxiety is not a malfunction. It is the entirely predictable, necessary friction of a fundamentally flawed mechanism attempting to operate. The key lies in understanding what the ego is and what Watts called the skin-encapsulated ego. You believe you are a separate thing, a little individual mind sealed off from the rest of the universe by your skin and skull. You are in here. The world is out there. You are the subject. Everything else is the object. This sense of separation is the foundation of the ego. It is the idea that I am doing the breathing, I am doing the living, and I must exert control over it, the world outside, in order to survive. But Watts insisted this feeling of separation is an utter hallucination. It is a myth, a social convention, a game of grammar. The idea of you being a separate mind is as nonsensical as saying the crest of a wave is separate from the ocean itself. The wave only exists because of the ocean. You only exist because of the entire universe, the vast continuous flow of energy that is your life. Your thoughts are not yours, in the sense that you created them from scratch. They are an echo of what the universe is thinking through the unique filter of your brain. Your body is not a static object you inhabit. It is a river, exchanging millions of atoms every second with the world around you. You are, in every true sense of the word, an event, not a thing. The ego is the part of you that refuses this truth. It is the inner accountant who insists on drawing a firm, uncrossable line between self and other. And once this line is drawn, the primary, non-negotiable job of the ego is to preserve this boundary. It must constantly define itself against the world, and it does this in three primary, deeply sabotaging ways. We can call these the three sabotaging laws of the ego. They are not flaws. They are the perfect expression of the ego's core nature. And they are why every attempt you make to simply be happy or be successful must inevitably fail. The first and most destructive law of the ego is its relentless demand for certainty. If you are a separate, skin-encapsulated thing fighting for survival against an immense, chaotic universe, then your survival depends entirely on birth control. You must know what is coming next. You must secure your identity against the fluidity of life. You must make the future predictable. Watts called this the fundamental anxiety of our culture. We are afraid of the unpredictable, afraid of the change that is the very nature of existence itself. And here is where the sabotage begins. The ego does not just want a degree of control, it wants absolute, unconditional certainty. Anything less is a threat to its existence. This is the mechanism that turns success into fear, and it is why we often destroy what we have totally just acquired. Think about a moment when you stood on the brink of success. You finish the novel. You are given the promotion. You finally meet the partner who is not damaged, not complicated, but simple, good. What happens? The anxiety swells up. The ego whispers, "This is too good to last. If you launch this, it might fail, and then everyone will know you are a fraud. If you commit to this person, you might lose them and the pain will be unbearable." To the ego, a successful, launched, and loved thing is dangerous precisely because it is subject to change. It is vulnerable. It is out in the world where it can be judged, lost, or broken. But an unlaunched project, an uncommitted relationship, a potential success, these are safe. They are certain. They exist only in the realm of the imagination, where the ego can fully control them. The self-saboteur, therefore, will often destroy the very thing they desire, the complete, real, successful thing, and replace it with the uncertainty of the potential low. They would rather guarantee the failure now than risk the uncertainty of a possible failure later. This is the backward law in action. The effort to secure success through absolute control produces the very tension that prevents success from being realized. It is like trying to catch water by squeezing it. The tighter you clench your fist, the faster the water flows out through your fingers. If you try to secure your happiness by controlling all the variables, the very effort of control makes you tense, anxious, and inevitably leads to a self-inflicted accident that lets you drop the whole thing, thus achieving the certainty of known failure over the risk of unknown success. The ego prefers the predictable misery it already knows to the unpredictable joy it does not. It is the certainty of the prison cell over the terrifying freedom of the open sky. And its sabotage is simply a successful operation to put you back in the cell. The second law is directly related to the first. The ego fundamentally fears the death of the known self. Alan Watts observed that the human problem is not death itself, but the idea of death. The terror that the I that we have spent a lifetime building will simply cease to be. The ego is your identity, your set of beliefs, your personal narrative, your remembered failures, your traumas, and your aspirations. It is a carefully curated museum of the self, and if you achieve true success, genuine peace, or real transformation, you will inevitably render that old museum obsolete. You sabotage because success often requires you to become a person you have never been. Imagine your identity is built around being the struggling artist, the dependable martyr, or the person with a complicated past. This identity, painful as it is real to the ego. It is a known quantity. It is the frame of reference. Now imagine you achieve a great, effortless breakthrough. You let go of the struggle. You realize you don't need to martyr yourself to be loved. You forgive the past and decide to live fully in the present. The old ego, the old I, must now die. And the ego, perceiving this change as an existential threat, will fight back with everything it has. It will produce self-sabotage mechanisms that feel completely alien to your conscious goals. Perhaps you realize you're unworthy of the success. Perhaps you feel too exposed. Perhaps you simply feel a profound sense of inauthenticity in the new role. This feeling is the ego's distress signal. If you keep going, the known self, will vanish, stop, turn back. This is why people who define themselves by their struggle often find new problems to replace old ones immediately after solving the original issue. They finally quit smoking only to immediately develop a gambling habit. They finally leave the toxic job only to dive headfirst into a toxic relationship. The ego is not interested in the content of the struggle. It is only interested in the struggle itself, because the act of struggling is the clearest evidence that the separate I is alive and fighting. It is the ego's way of continually asserting, I am here, I am defined, I am suffering, therefore I am. So when you see the final self-destructive act, the unexplained eruption of anger, the sudden paralysis of motivation, the bizarre choice to walk away, do not call it a character flaw. Call it an identity defense mechanism. It is the ego successfully defending its right to exist as the old, known, and defined self, even if that self is fundamentally miserable. It sacrifices the future for the comfort of a familiar past. The final, and perhaps most insidious, sabotaging law of the ego is its inability to exist fully in the bod, present moment. Watts taught that the ego is a function of time. It lives entirely in memory, the past, and anticipation, the future. The ego is forever drawing a contract. I will be happy when, or I cannot be happy because the present, the now, is the only place where true, effortless success, love, and creativity can happen. But the present moment is too fluid, too immediate, and too devoid of problems for the ego to tolerate. The ego needs a problem to solve because it needs a purpose that justifies its separate existence. If you are fully, perfectly, effortlessly here, watching the sunset, completely absorbed in a creative act or resting in genuine peace, there is no need for a separate, controlling I. In those moments of pure being, the illusion of separation dissolves. The wave realizes it is the ocean. This is what the ego fears most, the loss of its utility. So the ego sabotages the present moment by filling it with the noise of the past or the future. When you are finally writing the novel, the ego reminds you of the perfect sentence you wrote yesterday, creating a pressure to repeat it, or it floods you with anxiety about the critics who will judge the ending. It replaces the simple act of writing with the anxiety of being judged. When you are finally resting, the ego reminds you of the 1,000 things you still haven't done. The emails, the calls, the self-improvement projects, making the rest feel like a failure or a waste of time. It replaces being with doing. Watts's incredible observation here is that the ego, by living entirely on borrowed time, on the credit of a promised future or the debt of a remembered past, destroys the only moment in which you can actually do anything. The ego prevents you from finishing the project by convincing you that the true payoff is in the distant imagined future, not in the tedious present moment work. It prevents you from enjoying the relationship by convincing you that you must continually work on it, analyze it, and secure it, rather than simply being in it. This is the ultimate self-sabotage, the constant striving that ensures you never actually arrive. You are always running towards the goal, but never actually enjoying the land you run upon. You are, as Watts often said, eating the menu instead of the meal. The meal is the present moment. The menu is the ego's detailed, exhausting, and utterly useless plan for the future. So what is the reversal? If self-sabotage is the ego successfully doing its job, how do you stop it? The answer, in true Wattsian fashion, is the most counterintuitive thing possible. You stop trying to stop it. You cannot fight the ego directly. To fight it is to engage with it, to give it energy, and to confirm its separate existence as an opponent. Watts often used the metaphor of trying to relax. If I tell you to relax and you try to relax, the very effort of trying creates tension. The command is a paradox. The harder you work at it, the more tense you become. The same is true for the saboteur. If you say, I must stop procrastinating, I must stop ruining my life, I must fix my self-sabotage, you are simply handing the saboteur a new, fascinating problem to struggle with. You are empowering the ego by giving it a monumental task of self-improvement. And the ego loves self-improvement because it reinforces the core illusion. I am a flawed thing, and I, the separate ego, must labor to fix myself. The actual profound reversal lies in shifting your attention from the non-duality to the non-happening. Watts's solution is not effort, but effortless effort, the Taoist concept of Wu Wei. It is not passive inaction, but action that flows naturally, without forcing, without the internal policeman dictating every move. This is the practice. 1. Notice the sabotage, do not judge it. The next time the urge to pick a fight, to procrastinate, or to panic arises, do not treat it as a moral failing. Treat it as a weather pattern. Simply notice the internal mechanism. Say, there is the ego successfully trying to create certainty over change, or there is the mind successfully trying to pull me out of the present and into the future. 2. See the mechanism, not the mistake. You realize the saboteur isn't you. It is simply a psychological habit, a ghost in the machine that has been running on autopilot for years. It is a voice, a thought, an idea, not the essential reality of your being. By simply noticing it, without immediately trying to fix it, you withdraw the energy that fuels it. You see it as the performance and you simply stop being the audience. 3. Surrender to the flow. Once you've seen the ego's desire for certainty, the only counter is to move fully into uncertainty. The only counter to the fear of the death of the old self is to allow it to die. The art of not sabotaging is the art of radical permission. Give yourself permission to fail. Give yourself permission for the project to be imperfect. Give yourself permission for the relationship to end one day. Give yourself permission to not know what the next moment holds. When the ego sees that you are no longer clinging to the idea of success or failure, it has no leverage. When you realize that you, the essential awareness, are the same whether you succeed or fail, that you are the ocean, not just the wave, the game of sabotage dissolves. The energy you were using to control, to judge, and to fix the self-sabotage is suddenly released. It is this released energy that naturally, effortlessly flows into the actual work, the genuine creation, and the simple act of living. The final revelation is that the saboteur, the anxious, controlling, self-defining ego, was never actually your enemy. It was merely a servant who took its job description far too literally. It was designed to protect you from the terrifying unknown. Its method was flawed, based on a myth of separation, but its intention was not malicious. Alan Watts invites us to stop taking this little servant so seriously. The moment you can laugh at the saboteur, when you can see the absurdity of this little voice trying to control the vast, limitless intelligence of the universe that is living you, it stops having power. You stop being a person with a self-sabotage problem, and you become the awareness that notices the self-sabotage mechanism, and that is all the freedom you need. Your job is not to win the battle against the ego. Your job is simply to see the battle for what it is. A self-created illusion. The struggle stops not when you have finally fixed the problem, but when you realize you were never separate from the solution. You are not broken, you just thought you were. And the moment the thinking stops, the living begins.